What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about Karens, crazy people, and all that kind of stuff. As usual, we got some more Reddit posts to check out today, so let's get right into it. Entitled homeless man attempted to steal beer from my truck. This was after an already extremely entitled encounter with a different person. Sometimes I really hate the people of the state I'm born and raised in. I've got a truck, so I've been asked more than a few times since buying it to help friends and family move things. Anyway, last week, the cousin of a friend, someone I'd only been acquainted with twice, suddenly asked me for help moving stuff out of his old apartment and into his new apartment. He was physically disabled and needed a cane to walk. The friend of a friend told me his cousin was disabled from a bad spine injury around a decade prior and had finally gotten a Section 8 apartment. They kind of played up the fact that he was disabled to get my help, so I reluctantly agreed. But then the guy was actually offended when I said I'd only help if he paid me for my time and gas. I think he thought he could get my help free. But this was a guy that was a cousin to someone I'm not even close to, that was friends with someone I'm barely close to. Some of my other friends called this guy a total Gary. Not sure if that's some new meme or an inside joke. Don't really care either. But I'll use the name Gary just to make things easier. So I helped Gary to move after he agreed to pay me. But he acted completely butthurt when I refused to help unless he paid me in advance. I'm not dumb. I could tell this guy would have tried to weasel out of paying me if I asked for the money after. So he begrudgingly gave me $100 cash for 2 trips of getting his stuff out of storage into his new apartment. But he lied about the distance we'd be driving. He said 20 miles, but when I put the address into the GPS, it was 35. I used most of what he paid me just to put gas in my truck, because I made multiple trips of driving this guy's stuff 35 miles each way. That was 140 miles total. And I was doing most of the heavy lifting because Gary couldn't do any heavy lifting because of his bad back. The apartment I was helping get the stuff to was also on a 3rd floor, so that was a lot of painful lifting. Once all the stuff was finally unloaded, Gary wanted me and the friend of a friend who introduced me to him to stick around and help him unpack and arrange everything. I tried to be nice about it, but he kept insisting, and told me I have to help more since I gouged him for cash. I got mad and pointed out I helped him for several hours and I barely know him. If anything, I undercharged him, especially since he lied about how far we were going. Plus, he clearly didn't even want to pay me to begin with. He'd have had to pay several times more if he hired professional movers. Plus, he was constantly rude to me the entire time, and I heard him call me a redneck garbage collector when he thought I wasn't listening. Then I told him what my actual job and salary is and that I'm never going to help him with anything ever again. Gary got really red in the face and I walked out while he called me names and said he never wanted to see me again. I said back the feeling was pretty mutual. And now that he's so far away, I'm probably not going to be seeing him again anytime soon, which I'm thankful for. I've also told my other friends about this and they all agree Gary was out of line, and the friend of a friend who put me up to all that hasn't even messaged me to apologize. I was incredibly mad after leaving and decided I was going to get some beer and just go home and get drunk. I stopped at a gas station, got the beer, and then noticed a taco truck down the street. So I parked at the taco truck, ordered the biggest overpriced burrito they had, and then sat in their waiting area. As I was sitting there, I noticed some random guy in a plaid shirt just casually stroll up to my truck and reach in through the window. He snagged my 6-pack of beer and started to just walk away casually with it, but I yelled at him to put the beer back. He stopped and looked at me like a deer in headlights, then tried to act innocent and claim he was just walking home with his beer. I remarked I'm the owner of the truck he just stole that beer out of, and I just watched him do it. Then I said to put the beer back before I started calling the police. He actually complained that it was just a 6-pack of beer and I could easily go buy another one. I told him it didn't matter what it was. He was a thief, and an entitled one at that, and to put the damn beer back before I got mad. He dropped the beer back on my seat from the window, then gave me the finger before leaving. Someone nearby remarked the thief was a local homeless drug addict who acts like that to everyone, and he'd gotten his ass kicked a few times in similar incidents. I immediately closed the windows and locked the doors on my truck, and then got my burrito and scarfed it down. I should have been surprised to deal with 2 really entitled people in one day, but frankly, I'm just not anymore. Mother-in-law deliberately infected my 1-year-old daughter with chickenpox. I can hardly type this out because thinking about it makes me so angry. Earlier this year, my husband, 31, and I decided to spend Christmas with his family for the first time since my daughter was born last September. Since they live 12 hours away, we decided to stay for a few weeks before Christmas so they could spend loads of time with Annie, 13 months. We arrived early like we planned and everything was great. I've had a few disagreements with my mother-in-law, Trish, 56, in the past over my parenting style. She criticized me for using disposable diapers, buying baby food from the supermarket, and not raising Annie as an organic baby. But everything seemed great. After a day or two settling in, my husband and I decided to pick up a few gifts from the mall around an hour away before the last-minute rush kicked in. My father-in-law, 60, tagged along. Trish said she was happy to take care of Annie. We got back a few hours later and Annie was down for a nap on a blanket I didn't recognize. Trish said one of her friends dropped by and gave it as an early Christmas gift. It looked pretty old and worn, but I figured one of her hippie friends was just recycling it. The next 2 weeks were fine, aside from Trish making a point to prepare meals for Annie from scratch. I mentioned this to my husband and he said to just let her be. Annie mostly mushed the food Trish gave her with her hands slashed through the bowls on the floor, as she's been doing at the moment. Trish said it would take her a while to get used to nutritious meals. I was getting sick of her meddling, but it was only for a few weeks, so for the sake of the holidays, I let it slide. The day after Christmas, Annie was really unsettled and wouldn't stop fidgeting and crying. I took her temperature and she had a fever, so I kept an eye on her for the next few days and it thankfully started to go down. This morning, she started to get a rash and blisters on her arms and legs and I freaked out. I was packing a bag to drive to see a doctor when Trish asked where I was going. I told her Annie had a rash and I was taking her to see a doctor. She got a weird, smug smile on her face and told me there was nothing to worry about. When I asked her what she was talking about, she said, without even looking at Annie, that what she had was chickenpox. I asked her how she could possibly know that, and she casually admitted one of her friend's grandkids had chickenpox a few weeks ago, so she asked them to wipe a blanket over the child's arms, legs, and face and bring it to her house. At this point, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I asked if that blanket was the gift Annie was sleeping on. She said it was. I lost my shit. To be honest, I don't really remember what I said because I was up most of the night for 2 days checking on Annie. I just unleashed on Trish asking what the was wrong with her. My husband and father-in-law came to try to calm things down, and Trish dug in her heels and said chickenpox was the best and most natural thing for Annie to build up her immunity. I already have a vaccination schedule in place with my pediatrician, and she was booked to get immunized for chickenpox at 18 months. We drove to see the doctor and he confirmed she had it. He said I'll have to cut Annie's nails short and might have to tape socks on her hands while she sleeps, because kids so young can scratch until they bleed and that will leave scars. On the drive back, my husband started making excuses for Trish, that she was only doing what she thought was best. I couldn't believe he was defending her and we fought most of the way home until I told him to stop talking to me. Annie's been scratching like crazy and I just had to tape socks over her hands. Trish tried talking to me when we got back and I told her to get out of my sight. We were meant to stay until Wednesday, but I just finished packing up our stuff so we can leave first thing in the morning. I'm so angry I can't even think. I don't ever want to see her again or let my daughter see her again. On to the update. I didn't think it would be possible, but things got worse. I got up first thing the next morning and started packing our stuff into the car. Once I opened it up, I kept the keys in my pocket since I was going in and out. Usually we use my husband Jack's set and leave mine in my bag. While I was packing, he sat in the kitchen with Trish and my father-in-law and chatted and had coffee like nothing was wrong. Annie was mercifully still asleep, so I just gently belted her in and closed her door when Jack came out and asked if I had everything. I said we were good to go as soon as he was. He said okay and calmly took out his key set and locked the car, locking Annie in. I asked him what the hell he was doing and he said we wouldn't be leaving until I apologized to Trish. I think I was stunned into silence because he then took the chance to rehash what he said the previous day. That Trish thought she was doing what was best, that chickenpox doesn't kill you, and that I was making a bigger deal out of this than I needed to, and making Trish feel bad. Yes, making her feel bad. I told him he needs to stop being a son and start being a father. He said he would always be Trish's son and that was the point, that nobody should speak to his mother the way I had the day before, and I needed to apologize to clear the air. I felt like I had entered some kind of weird Twilight Zone where I had accidentally married a 9-year-old instead of an adult man, so I just asked him to open the car so we could leave. He repeatedly refused, then walked back inside and said he would see me in there when I was acting more reasonable. You can probably guess what happened next. I'd left my bag on the passenger seat, so he probably assumed my keys were in there. Nope. I waited 30 seconds, then just hopped into the car and drove away. My phone blew up with a million calls from him, Trish, and my father-in-law. Eventually, my mom and dad and my sister Jess, who I'm super close with, called as well. I'd briefly texted Jess about what was happening the day before, but she was stunned to get the full blow-by-blow. By the time I was on the open road, I asked her to phone Jack and tell him he could walk home for all I care. Once she heard my side of the story and not Jack's, which was apparently that I had gone crazy, frightened Trish, snatched Annie, and sped away, she calmed way down. The next few days were fairly tense. I was up most of the night making sure Annie didn't scratch, which she did anyway somehow, and it seemed like she just cried and cried until she was exhausted. She has 5 scars on her face and a few others on her arms from scratching. I know appearances shouldn't matter, but I'm so angry her skin is marked for life now over some stupid bullcrap. This whole thing is just something I never expected to happen. I answered one of Jack's calls only to have him start a rant that he didn't recognize this person I had become, so I hung up on him. Then at like 11 p.m. one night, I got a very short informal text from my father-in-law via Jack's phone, saying Trish had come down with shingles and was in the emergency room, that Jack was staying there to care for her, and that he would work from their house remotely once the year started back up. Jack's been there for the past few weeks tending to Mama's every whim. I'm sure she's put on an Oscar-worthy performance of having one foot in the grave. And according to Google, it should be any day now that her painful crusty pustules go gently into that sweet night. A few weeks ago, I was honestly so tired and overwhelmed and in disbelief that I didn't know what to do. Now I'm back at home with people who actually care about me. I think I'm starting to realize how lucky I am to see the weird relationship with his mommy this early on. The fact that he cares more about Trish than his own daughter speaks volumes. When he eventually comes back, I think we'll have a serious talk about our future together. And as a side note here, in regards to Trish getting shingles, from my understanding from Googling it just now, chickenpox and shingles are actually from the same virus, called varicella zoster. They're just 2 different conditions that can come from it. Chickenpox is the initial infection of the varicella zoster virus, while shingles is the reactivation of the virus, typically among older people, which is why it's recommended for people over 50 to get the vaccine for shingles, which, knowing Trish from this story, it's safe to say that she didn't. But this is all to say that her getting shingles now is not actually because she brought that blanket into the house. It's just very ironic and poetic timing, I guess. Anyway, that's going to be it for today, so thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. So have an awesome day everyone, stay tuned for more and I'll see you next time.